Let's look at examination type questions, question approach, and marking guide. The type of questions always set, how to approach them, and how do teachers mark your work. So the first question here says define heat capacity. As the word says heat capacity, it means it is the amount of heat. Now, when you have an object and you hit that object such that the temperature of that object increases by either 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin, then the amount of heat you have used is called heat capacity. So heat capacity is defined as the heat required to raise the temperature of a substance by 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin. Temperature is measured in Kelvin as the SI unit. Temperature also has other units like degrees Celsius or degrees centigrade. So when you heat an object and the temperature of that object increases by either 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin, then the amount of heat you have used is called heat capacity. So heat capacity is the quantity of heat required to raise the temperature of a substance by 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin. Now there is another word which is related to heat capacity, specific heat capacity. Now you realize that the definition of specific capacity is the same as heat capacity. The only difference here is you have to mention 1 kilogram mass. To be very specific, the mass of the body must be mentioned as 1 kilogram mass. The rest of the words remain the same. So we shall say specific capacity is the heat required to raise the temperature of a substance, but the temperature, the mass must be mentioned. So it is the quantity of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram mass of a substance by 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin. So the definitions are the same, except here you have to mention 1 kilogram mass to make it specific. Now, we have different ways of calculating heat capacity and specific capacity. Let's look at them. On the side of heat capacity, the formula is Q is equal to capital C times theta. Now, Q means the quantity of heat. The SI unit of heat is joules, capital J. Why? Because heat is energy. The SI unit of energy is what? Joules. Heat energy, joules. Then capital C means heat capacity. Now the heat capacity here, the SI unit is what? Joules per Kelvin or joules per degree Celsius, depending on the temperature. Has the temperature of the body increased by 1 degree Celsius or 1 Kelvin? So if it is in Kelvin, it is joules per Kelvin. If it is degree Celsius, it is joules per degree Celsius. Those are the units for heat capacity. Then theta, this one, means change in what? Temperature. Of course, when you heat a body, the temperature changes. How has it changed? If it is from 8 to 20, how has it changed? You subtract 20 minus 8. So how do you write? This theta, we are saying it is representing change in temperature. You simply write a 0 or an O, then you put a cross in the middle. Now when you put a cross in the middle, it means you have written this word theta, which means change in what? Change in temperature. So Q is equal to capital C, quantity of heat is equal to heat capacity times change in temperature. Then on the side of specific capacity, the formula is Q, which is still the quantity of heat in joules, is equal to M. Remember when we were defining specific capacity, we said 1 kilogram mass. So even in the formula for calculating specific capacity, there should be mass. MC theta. Now M, as we have already said, means the mass of a body. The mass, the SI unit of mass is always what? Kilograms. Then this is C here. That C is a small c. You see? This is C is big, heat capacity. Then for specific capacity, the C is what? Small. So this is C represents what? Specific heat capacity. The SI unit of specific capacity, we mentioned it, but we can talk about it, is joules per kilogram per Kelvin. You see? For heat capacity, it was joules per Kelvin. Without this kilogram, because there was no mass mentioned. But for specific capacity, the mass is mentioned. And the SI unit of mass is kilogram. So it is joules per kilogram per Kelvin. That is if the temperature is in Kelvin. If the temperature is in degrees Celsius, it becomes joules per kilogram per degree what? Celsius. Now, there is a relationship between heat capacity and specific heat capacity. We can put it in the form of an equation. Capital C, that is heat capacity, equals to M, which is what? Mass, times small c, which is what? Specific heat what? Capacity. So heat capacity is equal to mass times specific heat what? Capacity. In the form of an equation, we can say C capital, that is heat capacity, is equal to M, which is mass, times small c, which is specific what? Capacity. Capital C means heat capacity, M means mass, and C, small c means specific capacity. We already talked about their units. Let us look at an example of a question which can be said. A body of mass 12 kilograms, so the mass is already given, has a heat capacity of 480 joules per kilogram. So the heat capacity is given. Capital C is already given. Okay? And the question is, calculate. It is a specific heat capacity. 3 marks. Can you imagine? So we are going to see how do you get all the 3 marks. For you to get all the 3 marks, you have to write the formula. Then you substitute very well, substitution, get your correct answer, and then you get your correct unit. So let us do that to get all the marks. So we shall write our formula. Heat capacity, which is capital C, is equal to mass, which is small m, times specific heat capacity, which is what? Small c. You see, we got that from here. So you just transfer that information here. That is already the formula. Then you substitute. Where there is heat capacity, you write 480 because it was 480. You see here? So where there is a M, you write 12. The mass we were given is here. If the mass is in grams, you change to kilograms because the SI unit of mass is kilograms. But we have already been given the kilograms. So you just write 12 as the mass times the small c, which we are looking for, the specific what? Capacity. Now, if we do our calculation, we shall have 12 times c, which is 12c, equals to 480. Because we are interested in c, what do? We divide both sides by 12. And when we divide 12 by 12, here you remain with only c. Because 12 divided by 12 is 1. 1 times c is the same as c. Then this one divided by this, your good calculator will say the answer is 40. After writing 40, you write the units. What is the unit of specific capacity? Joules per kilogram per Kelvin, or joules per kilogram per degree Celsius. But how do you know which one to write? You see, the heat capacity was in joules per Kelvin. So we shall write the Kelvin, not degree Celsius. So joules per kilogram per Kelvin. We shall now award the 3 marks. 1 is for the formula, remaining 2 marks now out of 3. Another good 1 mark is for substitution. You remain with 1. So that one we shall divide into 2. A half for the correct answer and a half for the correct unit.